I'm going to go over the 10 biggest lessons I've learned being a professional music producer over the last 20 years. Now, these things can be applied to songwriters, artists, music producers, engineers. These are just some tips and tricks of the trade that took me way too long to learn. So I want to put this out there so that other people can hopefully, you, speed up your process of growth creatively, financially. This is everything I wish I knew when I was first getting into this business. So the first thing I would tell myself 10 years ago is that timing is everything. So I'm going to give you two examples looking back in the past of my career of where timing played a huge role in the trajectory of my career. The first one is a positive, which was that I entered a remix contest when I was 19 years old, and I did not win, but I got an email from one of the other participants, and it was Zed, and he had never released a song before, and he was like, "I love what you're doing." And I said, "I love what you're doing." We both didn't win, but we ended up deciding to start remixing each other's songs and ultimately started making songs together. And because of this really helped my career start out, being able to start with someone else who was obviously having a lot of growth, a lot more growth than I ended up having, but I got to kind of ride that wave with him, exploring new sounds in what was at the time called electro house. So that was just like great timing. Didn't even think of it as timing because I was just a kid, but being more aware now of the timing of everything is really important, because if you pay attention to when things happen and why they happen, you got to ride that wave. Now, let me explain where that did not work out in my favor. At the same time period, I got an email from David Guetta, and the way that he started the email was hilarious to me. He said, "Hello, of course you know who I am." That's how he started it. But basically what he ended up saying was that he loved the sound design I was doing, he liked the music I was making, and he asked if I wanted to join him and a team of other people to create music. And I got so excited about this. I had a manager at the time, and he was like way too cool for David Guetta. So he was just not about it at all. He was like super hipster dude. Now, as a 19-year-old, I fought with him a little bit, but I ended up just listening to him because I was like, he knows what's up. He's in his 30s. I'm a teenager. So I wrote the email back kind of being like, yo, I'm not just going to help you out, but I'm down to make a song or do a remix. And I kind of shut down his idea of me helping out in the production process for him, building synths and helping produce. Little did I know, this is when he was recruiting Afrojack at the same time to help write Titanium and a whole slew of other hits that kind of really made David Guetta what he was in those 2010s through 2014. Like when he was putting out hit after hit after hit with all these huge artists, I had no idea that I maybe could have been a part of that, but the timing wasn't right for me and I lost that opportunity. The point of this is that if I could go back and tell myself to do everything over again, I would pay attention to every moment something big came in that felt really good or exciting. And I would tell myself, don't listen to the outside noise. Timing is everything. If you hop on this could be huge. So that's my first word of advice. My next word of advice is to make music for yourself. And what I mean by that is when you start making money off of music, it's very easy to fall into the trap. And I call it a trap because it's an easy way for you to completely lose your flow of creativity when you start listening to the sounds of everyone else around you and also listening to your fan base if they're asking you to make songs that sound a particular way. This was something that I stayed away from for a while in my career, and when I was doing well making music, things were really good. I was just making stuff that I loved, and the moment I started to see like, oh, this style's making more money, or these people are paying attention to this, or maybe I can get more shows if I start doing this, those are important right brain conversations to have with yourself, but don't let them take over, because if you are having some sort of success making music that you love and other people are connecting with it, then all you have to do is trust yourself, because the moment you start questioning that, you're going to lose flow. And you're going to lose your own self-identity in music, which can be a horrible thing. It happened to me. Hope it doesn't happen to you. The next thing I would tell myself is that the grass is always greener. Own your strengths. And this is kind of similar to the last point, but a little bit different, and let me explain. So I've always been a very percussive-minded producer. The first instrument I played was drums. I started playing when I was 5, started producing when I was 12, and drums were the thing that I always gravitated towards. It's still the first thing that I start out with a track. It's the thing that I'm really, really confident with. And instead of just honing into that and being like, that's what I am great at is drums, and I start with rhythm, and that opens everything else up, I just started to look at all the stuff that I couldn't do as well. So I didn't play a melodic instrument growing up. I didn't know how to play the piano. I was still having a lot of success making songs that obviously had melodic elements, but I would beat myself up being like, you're not good enough. You don't know music theory. You have to do this, 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 and this. Not the case. If I could go back, I would absolutely tell myself, yo, listen, dude, you're great at this, own that, and just enjoy that that's your thing, because that is what separates you from a lot of other people. But my young mindset couldn't help but just try and look at my own flaws and fix them, which was a waste of my time and just not productive. The next word of advice I would give myself would be bold and don't be afraid to let an instrument shine, even if it's not your typical sound. So here's what I mean. When I was younger, when I was first doing it, I didn't pay attention to the mix that much. I was producing for a feeling, and that feeling often came from a synth being way too loud or a horn being way too loud, something jumping out of the mix, grabbing attention, and it sounded a little bit different. And what I ended up doing was I started getting really into mixing and being like, I need to balance this better, and focusing so hard on the perfect balance that by the end, I ended up having a mix that made my song sound like 1,000 other songs. It no longer sounded like me. And so what I'm saying is, if you are a music producer, you are a musician, and you're writing something, don't go for the perfect mix as you're writing. Go for your own sound, because your own sound might be wrong for a lot of other people, but with the right ingredients and the right little bit of going too far, you might get something that is so dope. So stick to your gut. If something sounds great, you just go with it. So the next piece of advice I would give myself is for when I was stopping doing dance music and I was starting to be a producer for bands and artists. So I was starting to work with other people in sessions. And the first thing I did was just jump straight into the music and see how it sounded and just go. That was the mistake. And what I've realized now is that far before the music starts, what you gotta do is you gotta understand the artist that you're working with. What makes them tick? What annoys them? What gets them confident? That's the main thing. So instead of worrying so much about what can I do musically to enhance this person's project, I start a lot more by just hanging out with the person and just kind of feeling out what type of person they are. So I think there's a ton of psychology that goes into having a great session and being a great producer for a session. And a lot of it does have to do with music, but I'd say the bulk of it has to do with having the artist that you're working with feeling as confident and as heard as possible. So listening is crucial. Not taking over the session. And obviously there's producers that do the opposite of this, but for me, what works for me now is when I really just listen to the artist I'm with, figure out what gets them going, and get them feeling as great as possible. Because if they're feeling good, then the music's going to be good. I'm going to get their best performance. We're going to create something special. Next, I would tell myself, no one cares if you're using a preset or a sample for that matter. And by no one, I mean like, yes, some of you guys, some of the producer community might call you out being like, that's from a Splice blah, blah, blah pack, or that's the preset in Sylenth. I wasted so much time trying to create everything from scratch, all my drums, every synth patch I wanted to create. I had this voice in my head that I was cheating if I used any tools made by other people to make my own music. And what I saw with a lot of my friends who were producing is they didn't have that same feeling. They could make a song based off of a loop, and if they found the right feeling in it and they put the right top line over it and added some great drums to it, it became an amazing song, and no one cared that it came from a sample except for a really small percentage of people. So that's why it's important to remember I'm not making music for producers. I'm making music for consumers. You don't need to beat yourself up thinking you need to make everything from scratch because you're just doing yourself a disservice. Next piece of advice is learning when to step away from a song. So I have a pretty easy rule that works for me, which is if I'm not getting out of my chair, screaming, jumping, singing, crying, laughing, having some emotional response to the music I'm making, it's not ready yet. And if I'm sitting there working hours and hours and I'm just not getting that magic feeling, it's time to move on. Not delete it, it's just time to move on. Because every single time I've had songs that have success, they are songs that I feel like it's the best thing ever. Now, I might go back to that song in 2 months and be like, wow, that was the best thing ever? No, what I'm working on now is the best thing ever. And that's how you should feel. But I do think it's important to have that feeling when you're making something. And if you're not getting that feeling, give it a break. Don't work it to death. Come back to it. You might have some ideas to bring it there in the future. All right, so this tip really, really, really works for me. Please hear me out. There is something here. So artists, musicians, We like to work at night a lot of the time. Not all of us. In fact, I've actually been working much more in the mornings over the last couple of years. That being said, there's something magical about working when everyone in the world's asleep, it's quiet outside, it's 2 a.m., and you're just like, I can lock in. And what I've realized is that the reason so many of us like to work that late is actually not about the nighttime. What it is that we are allowing ourselves to have our subconscious take over, and that is going to lead us to flow state. So let me explain what I mean by this. If I'm in the middle of paying my bills, dealing with a record label, needing to go grocery shopping, I've got everything going on, I have so much right brain activity that I'm very cut off from that magic feeling of when a song just comes through you. That doesn't come out at times when you're stressed about stuff and your focus is on all your different anxieties or things you need to get done. At least not for me. What works for me is when my brain is kind of shut down, sleep deprived is perfect. I've actually written my favorite songs when I wake up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. and I can't go back to sleep. And maybe I've only slept a couple hours, but I come back to the studio and that's when I write something amazing because my subconscious is leading. And there's a lot of ways to do this. Meditation, sleep deprivation, definitely smoking on some green stuff can work. Whatever works for you to shut down the anxious part of your brain and get you to the flow state. It's something that you can harness, something you can pay attention to. And then the next time that you're really tired but feeling kind of good, throw yourself in the studio. Remember I said this, be like, that dude said I should make music right now. Try it out because that's when I'm at my best, when my brain is mush and not thinking about anything else other than I want to make something. That leads me to my next tip, which kind of piggybacks off of that, which is that writer's block is not a bad thing and not something I fight anymore. There are months where I have writer's block, for sure. I'm not afraid to say that. There's been years in my life of writer's block, and that's been okay too. I had a lot of stress about it at the time, but now I know it's okay. And I'm not afraid of writer's block. In fact, I like writer's block because I think of it as recharging. So you know the feeling when you create something that doesn't feel like you made it. It's the same thing that a lot of people say, God made this, I didn't make it, or the universe did, or source did. There is an undeniable feeling when you write something or you write a top line, you make an amazing piece of music. It doesn't feel like something that you created alone. It feels bigger than that. And that's flow state to me. When you're flowing and everything you're doing is just sounding great, your confidence is at 10, everything's good, that's flow state. And flow state is not something that is sustainable forever. And it's something that needs to be recharged. And yes, like I said, you can get to flow state using different devices like meditation, sleep deprivation, whatever. But sometimes, at least for me, I need a real recharge. And what that means is I need to take myself completely off music for a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months, whatever it is. And whenever I come back, I used to think, oh shit, I'm going to be so rusty. But it's never the case. I always come back and I know exactly what I need to do to past projects, and I have so much inspiration for new stuff. Turning off your brain to music and taking a complete break is huge and something that I think is completely healthy and something to acknowledge as a positive. So I don't like to call it writer's block. I call it recharging. The last and most important thing, at least for me, and this is something that I still struggle with, but it's something that I'm actively focusing on, so I'm getting better at it, is that you don't need to do everything yourself. And yes, there's a lot of reasons why we like to do everything. If you're like me, I like to produce, I like to mix, I like to master, I like to sing, I like to write lyrics, I like to make artwork, I like to be involved in video ideas. I want to be doing everything. And there are some artists out there like Tyler, the Creator. There's so many examples, not so many, there's a few examples of artists that really can do it all. But also, if they have success, they know how to segment different tasks to different people and to just go off of their own strengths. So what I tell myself now when I'm get trapped in that I want to do this, is I write down the things that I'm good at and I start figuring out where I can bring people in. So if there's music videos needed, that's when I have a list of directors we start to reach out to. If I am working on a song that I'm loving production-wise, I have a list of mix engineers that I prefer to send my music to rather than mixing myself nowadays because I think it's good to pass it off to someone else. It's such a relieving feeling to let go of that control a little bit. Once you find the right people, the right community, the right team, it's really, really important to let other people start helping out, or you're just going to end up burning out and also not doing your best because collective work always wins. So I hope that some of these tips resonate with you. If they don't, please let me know. If they do, please let me know. I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you guys soon.